The great hall was silent as Admiral Hansu walked toward the speaking platform. Around him, hundreds of alien species watched from their seats. Some had 4 eyes. Some had no eyes at all. Some floated in water tanks. Others breathed gases that would kill a human in seconds. This was the Galactic Assembly, where every known civilization came to talk, argue, and make decisions that affected billions of lives. Humanity had joined this assembly only 5 years ago. To the older species, humans were babies. They had just learned to travel between stars. They had just discovered they were not alone in the universe. And now they faced their first real test. Admiral Hansu was 63 years old. His hair was gray, and his face carried the lines of a man who had seen too much. He had fought in 3 wars on Earth before humanity ever left their home planet. He knew what conflict looked like. He knew its cost. Today, he hoped to avoid another war. But deep in his heart, he knew that hope was fading. On the opposite side of the hall sat the Vrek delegation. The Vrek were tall creatures, nearly 3 meters high, with dark blue skin and 4 arms. Their empire controlled over 200 star systems. They had conquered 37 species in their long history. No one had ever stopped them. No one had ever said no to them and lived to tell about it. Envoy Talos, the Vrek diplomat, stood first. His voice was deep and cold. The Vrek Dominion has decided. The human colonies in the outer regions now belong to us. You will remove your people within 30 standard days. If you do not, we will remove them for you. The alien delegates shifted in their seats. Some looked at the human delegation with pity. Others looked away, unwilling to watch what they believed would be humanity's surrender. Admiral Hansu did not move. He stood still, his hands clasped behind his back. Commander Bro, the military leader of the Vrek forces, laughed. It was an ugly sound, like stones grinding together. Look at him. He does not even speak. Perhaps humans are too stupid to understand. Talos smiled. Give them time. Small minds need time to accept the truth. Admiral Hansu finally stepped forward. When he spoke, his voice was calm. It carried no anger. It carried no fear. It was simply clear, like water. We have heard your demand, he said. Now hear our answer. The Vrek delegates leaned forward, expecting words of surrender. Expecting begging. Expecting what every other species had given them. We do not seek war, Admiral Hansu continued. Humanity has seen enough war. We have buried enough of our children. We have cried enough tears. We want peace. We offer friendship to all who offer it in return. Talos waved one of his 4 hands dismissively. Pretty words. But words mean nothing. You are wrong, Hansu said. Words mean everything. Our ancestors taught us many things through words. One lesson says this: those who stand together cannot be broken. The Vrek delegation burst into laughter. Commander Brel slapped his hand against the table. Poetry! The humans respond to threats with poetry. But Admiral Hansu was not finished. Another lesson says, the mountain does not bow to the wind. It stands, and the wind passes. More laughter filled the Vrek section. Even some other alien species smiled, thinking the humans were foolish. Your lessons are cute, Talos said, his voice dripping with mockery. But lessons will not stop our warships. Lessons will not protect your colonies. You are small. You are weak. You have been traveling the stars for only a moment. We have ruled them for 10,000 years. I, Lord Morik, the supreme leader of the Vrek, appeared as a hologram above the assembly. His image was massive, towering over everyone. His 4 eyes looked down at the human admiral, like a giant looking at an insect. Human, Morik said, I will give you one chance to show wisdom. Surrender your outer colonies. Pay tribute to the Dominion. Serve us, and you may live. Resist, and your species will become a memory. A footnote in history. A warning to others. Admiral Hansu looked up at the hologram. He did not look away. He did not blink. "Aye, Lord," he said. "I have one thing to say to you. Remember it well." The hall fell silent. Even the Vrek stopped laughing. "If you come for our worlds," Hansu said slowly, "if you threaten our families, if you try to make us kneel, you will learn something important. You will learn that humans do not kneel. We never have. We never will. Our history is written in the blood of those who tried to make us submit. Every tyrant who tried to break us is now dust. Every empire that tried to conquer us is now forgotten. We remain." He paused and let his words sink in. "You have 30 days? Good. Use them to study human history. Learn what happened to those who thought we were weak. Learn about the empires we brought down. Learn about the walls we broke. Learn about the wars we won when no one believed we could." Commander Brell stood up, his face twisted with anger. "You dare threaten us? You are nothing. Your ships are primitive. Your weapons are toys. Then you have nothing to fear," Admiral Hansu replied calmly. "Come and take our worlds. But do not say you were not warned." High Lord Morik's hologram flickered. When he spoke again, his voice was ice. 30 days, human. 30 days, and your species will learn its place." The hologram vanished. The Vrek delegation left the hall. Still laughing and mocking the humans. Dr. Yuna, who had been sitting quietly behind Admiral Hansu, moved closer to him. She was the chief science officer of the human delegation. She had spent years studying alien cultures. "They did not listen," she said quietly. "No," Hansu agreed. "They did not. They have never studied our history. They think our words are empty." Admiral Hansu turned to look at her. For a moment, something dark passed through his eyes. Something ancient. Something that remembered every war humanity had ever fought. "Then they will learn," he said. "The hard way." As they left the great hall, the other alien species watched them go. Some still felt pity. Others felt something else now, a small flicker of doubt. The human had not begged. He had not cried. He had stood before the most powerful empire in the galaxy and spoken like an equal. That night, across human space, the message spread. The Vrek were coming. War was coming. And humanity, as it always had, began to prepare. The colony of New Bizin floated in the darkness of space. It was a small world, rocky and cold, but humans had built a home there. 50,000 people had lived in its dome cities. They had raised children. They had built schools and hospitals. They had planted gardens under artificial lights. Now the cities were empty. The people were gone, moved to safer worlds deeper in human territory. Only ghosts remained in the silent streets. And one ship, the Earth Defense Vessel Resolve, waited alone in the asteroid field near New Bizin. It was not a large ship. It was not the most powerful ship in the human fleet. But its crew was ready. Captain Taewoo stood on the bridge, watching the scanner displays. He was 41 years old, with a calm face that rarely showed emotion. His crew trusted him completely. They had served with him for 7 years. They knew he would not ask them to do anything he would not do himself. Lieutenant Su Jin sat at the tactical station. She was younger, only 29, but her mind was sharp as a blade. She could see patterns in battle that others missed. She could find weakness where others saw only strength. "Captain," she said quietly, "they are here." The scanner showed 50 Vrek warships dropping out of hyperspace. They were massive vessels, each one carrying enough firepower to destroy a city. They moved in perfect formation, confident and proud. Commander Brell stood on the bridge of the lead ship. He looked at the empty planet below and smiled. The humans have run away. Like animals. Like prey. His second officer pointed at the scanner. Sir, there is one ship. Hiding in the asteroids. Burrell laughed. One ship? Send them a message. Tell them to surrender or die. The message came through to the Resolve. Tae-woo listened to it calmly. The wreck voice was full of contempt. Human vessel, you are surrounded. Lower your shields and prepare to be captured. If you resist, you will be destroyed. You have 60 seconds. Tae-woo looked at his crew. They looked back at him. No one spoke. No one needed to dot. He opened a channel to broadcast to the entire wreck fleet. This is Captain Tae-woo of the Earth Defense Vessel Resolve. I have a message for Commander Brell and for every wreck soldier listening. On the wreck flagship, Brell raised an eyebrow. He wants to talk. Let him beg. But Tae-woo did not beg. Our people have a saying, the captain continued. A problem becomes a problem only when you refuse to face it. You see us as a problem. We see you the same way. The difference is, we are ready to face you. Brell snorted. More human poetry. More meaningless words. One more thing, Tae-woo said. At the Galactic Assembly, Admiral Hansu warned you. You laughed. You did not listen. He paused. Now I will teach you why you should have listened. Brell waved his hand angrily. Destroy that ship, now. The wreck fleet opened fire. Energy beams lit up the darkness. Missiles streaked toward the asteroid field. But the Resolve was already moving. Tae-woo had studied the asteroid field for weeks. He knew every rock, every gap, every shadow. The ship danced between the asteroids like a fish swimming through coral. Wreck weapons hit stone instead of metal. Explosions filled the field with dust and debris. Return fire, Tae-woo ordered. Lieutenant Soo-jin had been waiting for this moment. She had studied every piece of information about wreck ships. Dr. Yuna had given her data taken from intercepted communications. She knew exactly where wreck shields were weakest. The Resolve fired. Its weapons were not as powerful as the wreck guns, but they hit the right places. The first wreck ship lost its engines. It spun out of control and crashed into another vessel. Both ships exploded in a ball of fire. The wreck fleet stopped laughing. What is happening? Burrell shouted. How is one ship doing this? The Resolve disappeared into the asteroid field again. It reappeared behind the fleet and fired at the flagship's engine section. The shots were precise, perfect. The flagship shuddered as its engines failed. Our shields, the wreck engineer reported, his voice shaking. They knew where to hit us. They knew exactly where. Burrell gripped his command chair. This was impossible. No species had ever damaged a wreck fleet like this. No species had ever fought back this hard. The battle continued for 2 hours. The Resolve used every trick humanity had ever learned about fighting against larger enemies. They used decoy drones to confuse wreck targeting systems. They used the asteroids as shields. They struck and vanished, never staying in one place long enough to be hit. Lieutenant Soo-jin coordinated every attack. Her hands flew across her controls. Her eyes never left the tactical display. She saw the battle like a game of chess, always 3 moves ahead. When the Resolve finally retreated into hyperspace, 9 wreck warships were destroyed. 12 more were badly damaged. The flagship itself was crippled. On the wreck bridge, Brell stood in silence. Around him, his crew was in shock. Some were injured. Some were dead. The air smelled of smoke and fear. His second officer spoke weakly. Sir, they are gone. Should we pursue? Brell did not answer for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice had changed. The arrogance was gone. In its place was something new. Something he had never felt before. out. "No," he said. "We regroup. We repair." He turned and walked to his private chamber. There, alone, he recorded a message for High Lord Morik. "My lord," he said, "the humans did not surrender. They fought. One ship against 50, and they—" He stopped, struggling with the words. "They did not fight like any species we have seen. They fight without honor, like cornered animals. They do not care if they die. They only care about taking us with them." He paused again. "We will need more ships. Many more." On the Vrek homeworld, High Lord Morik watched the message. His 4 eyes narrowed. Around him, his advisors waited nervously. "One ship," Morik said slowly. "One small ship killed 9 of our warships." "A trick," one advisor suggested. "They cannot do this again." "Perhaps," Morik replied. "Or perhaps we have made a mistake." He stood up, his massive form casting a shadow over the room. "Send 500 ships," he ordered. "If they want a war, we will give them one they will never forget. We will burn their worlds. We will scatter their ashes across the stars. And we will make sure no other species ever dares to defy us again." The orders went out. The Vrek war machine began to move. But somewhere in human space, Captain Taewoo sat in his quarters and looked at a picture of his family. His wife, his 2 children. He missed them. He wanted to go home, but he knew his duty. He had bought humanity time with blood and fire. Now others would have to use that time wisely. He whispered an old saying his grandmother had taught him: "Fall 7 times. Stand up 8. Then he closed his eyes and rested, knowing that harder battles were coming. 500 Vrek warships moved through the darkness of space like a swarm of hungry insects. They were the largest fleet the Dominion had sent against any enemy in 300 years. High Lord Morik wanted to send a message. He wanted to show the galaxy what happened to those who resisted. On distant worlds, alien species watched the news reports. They saw the size of the Vrek fleet. They saw the small human territory on the galactic map. And they shook their heads sadly. The humans were brave, they said. But bravery is not enough against such power. In the Galactic Assembly, delegates from a dozen species held a moment of silence for humanity. They believed they were watching the death of a young civilization. They were wrong. On Earth, in the underground command center beneath Sol Megacity, Admiral Hansu stood before a wall of screens. Each screen showed a different part of human space. Ships were moving. Soldiers were preparing. Civilians were evacuating to protected bunkers deep underground. "They think this will be easy," Hansu said to his officers. "They think 500 ships will be enough to break us." He turned to face them. His eyes were hard. "Show them what humans are made of." The war spread across a dozen star systems. The Vrek expected quick victories. They expected humans to surrender after losing a few battles. They expected fear to break human resistance. Instead, they found something else entirely. On the colony world of Miryang Station, Sergeant Daeho led a small force of 200 soldiers against a Vrek occupation army of 5,000. The Vrek commander laughed when he heard the numbers. He ordered his troops to capture the humans alive so they could be used as examples. But Daeho did not fight the way the Vrek expected. His soldiers hid in the tunnels beneath the colony. They attacked at night, in the dark, when Vrek eyes could not see well. They set traps in buildings. They poisoned water supplies. They whispered messages through the colony's communication system, making the Vrek believe human soldiers were everywhere. The Vrek grew afraid. Not of human weapons, which were weaker than their own. They grew afraid of the darkness. They grew afraid of silence. They grew afraid of the moment just before an attack. When anything could happen, Daeho taught his soldiers an old truth. Fear is a weapon. Use it. Within 2 weeks, the Vrek occupation force was broken. They retreated from Mirroring Station, leaving behind their equipment and their dead. They reported to Commander Brell that the humans fought like ghosts, like demons, like nothing they had ever seen in space. The battle was just as fierce. Captain Taewoo commanded the defense of the Jiang sector, where 3 human colony worlds were grouped close together. His fleet was small, only 60 ships against over 100 wreck vessels. The wreck attacked in their traditional formation, a wall of ships moving forward together. It was a formation that had crushed countless enemies. Taewoo did not try to match them strength against strength. He knew he would lose that fight. Instead, he split his fleet into small groups of 5 ships each. These groups attacked from different directions at the same time. They struck at the edges of the wreck formation, hit weak points, and retreated before the wreck could respond. Lieutenant Su Jing called this tactic ghost maneuvers. The human ships appeared from sensor shadows, from behind planets, from inside asteroid fields. They attacked and vanished like spirits in the night. The wreck could not understand it. Their military had always believed in direct confrontation. They believed in facing their enemy and crushing them with superior force. The idea of hiding, retreating, and attacking again was strange to them. "Cowards!" Commander Brell shouted when he heard the reports. "They run from every fight." But his officers noticed something troubling. The humans were not losing ships as fast as the wreck expected, and the wreck were losing ships faster than they ever had. One wreck captain wrote in his personal log, "The humans do not fight to win battles. They fight to survive. They trade space for time. They trade ships for damage. They make us pay for every system we take. This is not war as we know it. This is something else." The most terrifying thing for the wreck was what happened when human ships were damaged beyond repair. A normal species would surrender. A normal species would try to save themselves. A normal species would accept capture rather than death. Humans were not normal. Damaged human ships did not surrender. They turned toward the nearest wreck vessel and accelerated. They crashed themselves into the enemy, destroying both ships together. Human pilots ejected from dying fires and used their emergency suits to board wreck ships, fighting hand-to-hand until they were killed. The wreck had a word for creatures that accepted death to harm their enemies. The word translated roughly as insane. They began using that word a lot when talking about humans. On the wreck homeworld, High Lord Morik received daily reports. At first, he was confident. His fleet was advancing. Human worlds were falling, but the numbers told a different story. For every human world they captured, they lost 20 ships. For every system they controlled, they faced months of guerrilla resistance. The war was supposed to be over in weeks. It had now lasted 3 months, with no end in sight. Envoy Talus, who had laughed at Admiral Hansu and the Galactic Assembly, no longer laughed. He came to Morik with concern on his face. "My lord," he said, "the other species are watching. They see that we have not crushed the humans quickly. They see our losses. Some are beginning to whisper that perhaps the Dominion is not as strong as they believed." Morik's eyes narrowed dangerously. "Then we must end this war. Quickly." He called Commander Brell to his chamber. "You have failed me," Morik said coldly. "I gave you 500 ships. You have lost nearly 150 against a species that has been traveling the stars for only 50 years. Brell lowered his head. "My lord, these humans, they do not fight like others. They do not fear death. Every time we think we have won, they find a new way to hurt us. Then find a way to break them," Morik ordered. "Attack their home. Attack Earth itself. Kill enough of them that the rest will surrender." Brell hesitated. "My lord, their home system is heavily defended. We would need to send most of our remaining fleet." "Then send it," Morik said. End this war. Now. The order was given. The wreck gathered their remaining ships, nearly 300 vessels, and began the long journey toward Earth. When human intelligence learned of the attack, Admiral Hansu gathered his commanders for one final meeting. "They are coming for our home," he said. "They believe if they destroy Earth, we will break. They believe if they kill enough of us, the rest will surrender." He looked at each face in the room. Captain Tae Woo, Lieutenant Su Jin, Sergeant Daeho, who had returned from Miryang Station, Dr. Yuna, who had worked day and night to find new weaknesses in wreck technology. "They still do not understand us," Hansu continued. "They still do not know what we are. Let us teach them one final lesson." He activated a map showing the Sigma Reach system, a strategic point between wreck space and Earth. "We will meet them here," he said. "We will stop them here. And when this battle is over, the galaxy will know why humans are feared." The human fleet gathered at Sigma Reach, every ship that could fly, every soldier who could fight, every pilot who could fly a fighter. They knew many of them would not survive. They knew the wreck still outnumbered them, but they came anyway, because that was the human way. The Sigma Reach system had no planets. It had only a dying star and a field of broken rocks that had once been worlds. It was a dead place, empty and cold. Soon it would become a graveyard. The human fleet waited in the shadow of the largest asteroid. 120 ships. It was everything humanity had left. Every vessel that could still fight. Every crew that was willing to die. Captain Taewoo stood on the bridge of the Resolve, looking at the tactical display. The wreck fleet would arrive in less than 1 hour. Nearly 300 warships, each one larger and more powerful than anything the humans had. The numbers said humanity would lose. The numbers said this was the end. But Taewoo had stopped believing in numbers. A long time ago, Lieutenant Su Jin worked at her station, making final adjustments to their battle plans. She had not slept in 3 days. Her eyes were red, but her hands were steady. "All ships report ready," she said quietly. Tae-Woo nodded. He opened the channel to the entire fleet. "This is Captain Tae-Woo. In a few minutes, the wreck will arrive. They are coming to destroy our home. They are coming to end our species. They believe today will be the day humanity dies." He paused, letting his words settle in the hearts of every human listening. They are wrong. Today is the day they learn why they should have listened to Admiral Hansu. Today is the day they learn what our words really mean. On a different ship, Dr. Yuna sat at a communication station. She had prepared something special for this moment. A message that would be broadcast to every wreck ship the moment they arrived. She had spent weeks on this message. She had translated human history and human wisdom into the wreck language. She wanted them to understand, finally, what they were facing. The wreck fleet dropped out of hyperspace like a storm breaking over the horizon. 300 ships spread across the darkness like stars made of metal and fire. Commander Brell stood on his new flagship. His old ship had never been repaired after the battle at New Bizen. He still remembered that day. He still remembered the shame of being defeated by a single human vessel. Today, he would have his revenge. "Commander," his officer reported, "we are receiving a transmission from the human fleet. Audio and visual." Brell smiled coldly. "Put it through. Let us hear their begging." But it was not begging that filled the wreck communication channels. Dr. Yuna appeared on every screen in the wreck fleet. She spoke in their language, her pronunciation perfect. "Soldiers of the wreck Dominion," she said, "you came to our galactic assembly and laughed at our words. You called our wisdom primitive poetry. You believed our sayings were empty sounds with no meaning." She held up a data pad and began to read. "Those who stand together cannot be broken." This saying comes from a time when our ancestors faced enemies that outnumbered them greatly. They stood together anyway. They won anyway. The enemy is forgotten. We remain. On the wreck ships, soldiers listened in confusion. What was this human doing? Fall 7 times, stand up 8. This saying comes from warriors who believed that defeat was not the end. Only giving up was the end. As long as you can stand, you keep fighting. As long as you breathe, you have not lost. Dr. Yuna's voice grew stronger. The mountain does not bow to the wind. Our ancestors stood against empires greater than yours. They stood against armies that covered the earth like locusts. They stood against weapons that burned cities to ash. They did not bow. They did not kneel. They endured, and they won. Commander Brell felt something cold touch his heart. He did not understand the feeling. He never felt it before. It was fear. You asked why humans do not surrender. Dr. Yuna continued. Now you will see. You asked why humans are feared. Today you will learn. We tried to warn you. Admiral Hansu stood before your leaders and gave you a chance to avoid this day. You laughed at him. Her eyes hardened. We are not laughing. We never forget. We never forgive those who threaten our families. And today, you will pay for every world you burned, every person you killed, every child who cried because of your cruelty. The transmission ended. For a long moment, silence filled the wreck fleet. Then Commander Brell shook himself and barked orders. Enough of this. Attack. Destroy them all. The wreck fleet moved forward. The human fleet moved to meet them. The Battle of Sigma Reach had begun. The first hour was chaos. Energy beams crossed the darkness like deadly light. Explosions bloomed like flowers of fire. Ships died on both sides, breaking apart into burning pieces that floated through the void. Captain Taewu commanded his fleet with calm precision. He had planned for this battle for weeks. Every captain knew their role. Every ship knew where to go and what to do. Lieutenant Su Jin coordinated the defense like a master playing an instrument. Her ghost maneuvers split the wreck formation again and again. Human ships appeared where they were not expected, struck hard, and vanished. But the wreck had learned from their earlier defeats. They adapted their tactics. They protected their weak points. They stopped falling for the same tricks. The battle became a grinding war of survival. Ships fell on both sides. The human fleet grew smaller, but they fought on. Then something happened that the wreck had never seen before. A human cruiser, the Brave Light, took a direct hit to its engine section. The ship was dying. Its captain, a young woman named Ji Young, knew she had only minutes before the reactor exploded. She did not try to escape. She did not ask for rescue. She aimed her dying ship at the nearest wrecked battleship and accelerated to maximum speed. For Earth, she said calmly. For everyone. The Brave Light crashed into the wreck vessel. Both ships vanished in a ball of nuclear fire. Across the human fleet, other captains saw what Ji Young had done. They understood. When their ships were hit, when death was certain, they did the same thing. They turned their dying vessels into weapons. The wreck watched in horror. They could not understand. What kind of creatures chose death like this? What kind of beings smiled as they flew into enemy fire? Commander Brell screamed orders, but his voice was shaking now. His fleet was winning. They were destroying more human ships than they were losing. But it did not feel like winning. Every human death cost them something. Every victory felt like a defeat. 3 hours into the battle, the human fleet was down to 50 ships. The wreck still had over 150, but those 150 ships had witnessed something that changed them. They had seen humans fight without fear. They had seen humans die without hesitation. They had seen mothers and fathers, sons and daughters, fly into certain death with steady hands and clear eyes. They had seen what the human words really meant. Captain Taewu looked at the tactical display. His ship was damaged. His fleet was broken. By every measure, they had lost. But the Vrek were not advancing. "Sir," Lieutenant Sujin said quietly, "the Vrek fleet has stopped." Tae-woo stared at the display. She was right. The Vrek ships were holding position. They were not pressing their advantage. A communication came through from the Vrek flagship. Commander Brell's face appeared on the screen. He looked like a different creature than the one who had laughed at New Bizon. His eyes were hollow. His voice was empty. "Human captain," Brell said slowly, "my fleet still outnumbers yours. I can still destroy you." "Then do it," Tae-woo replied. Brell was silent for a long moment. "Why?" he finally asked. "Why do you fight like this? Why do you choose death when you could surrender? We would have let you live. We would have let your species survive." Tae-woo thought about the question. He thought about his family. He thought about Earth. He thought about every human who had ever stood against impossible odds and refused to fall. "Because some things are worth more than survival," he said. "Our freedom, our future, our dignity. These things cannot be surrendered. They cannot be taken. They can only be given away. And we will never give them away." Brell lowered his head. "My Lord Morik was wrong about your species," he said quietly. "You are not weak. You are not primitive. You are the most dangerous creatures we have ever faced." He took a deep breath. "The Vrek fleet is withdrawing. We need to reconsider this war." The communication ended. Lieutenant Sujin watched the Vrek ships turn and retreat. Tears ran down her face. "We won," she whispered. "We actually won." Tae-woo did not answer. He looked at the debris field around them. So many ships destroyed. So many friends lost. They had won the battle. But the war was not over yet. 6 months had passed since the Battle of Sigma Reach. The galaxy had changed in ways no one had expected. The Vrek Dominion, which had ruled with iron strength for 10,000 years, had requested a ceasefire. For the first time in their history, they had asked for peace instead of demanding surrender. The news spread across every inhabited world, carried by traders and diplomats and whispered in secret by those who had lived under Vrek rule for generations. The impossible had happened. A young species, barely 50 years into space travel, had stopped the unstoppable empire. Admiral Hansu returned to the Galactic Assembly Hall on Harmony Prime. The last time he had walked these halls, the Vrek had laughed at him. They had called his words empty poetry. They had promised to make humanity a memory. Now, as he walked toward the speaking platform, no one laughed. The alien delegates watched him with new eyes. Some looked at him with fear, wondering if humans would become the next great conquerors. Some looked at him with respect, seeing in him a strength they had thought lost from the galaxy. And some the species who had suffered under Vrek rule looked at him with something close to hope. High Lord Morik appeared as a hologram, just as he had 6 months ago. But he looked different now. Smaller, older. His 4 eyes had lost their cruel confidence. "Admiral Hansu," Morik said, his voice carefully controlled. "I have agreed to meet you here to discuss terms for peace." Hansu nodded. "I am grateful for your willingness to talk, High Lord." "Willingness?" Morik let out a sound that might have been a bitter laugh. "Your species has destroyed nearly half of my fleet. Your soldiers have driven my armies from 6 occupied worlds. My own military leaders have told me that continuing this war would cost us everything we have built." He leaned forward, his hologram flickering slightly. "I have one question, Admiral. One question that has haunted me since the Battle of Sigma Reach. One question that I must have answered before we can move forward." Hansu waited. "How?" Morik asked. "How did you resist us?" How did your small, young species stand against an empire that has conquered dozens of civilizations? How did you do what no one else has ever done? The hall fell completely silent. Every alien delegate leaned forward. They all wanted to hear the answer to this question. Admiral Hansu took his time. He thought about everyone who had fought and died. He thought about Captain Tai Wu, who had led the defense of Sigma Reach. He thought about Lieutenant Su Jin, whose tactical genius had turned the tide of countless battles. He thought about Sergeant Daiho, whose guerrilla fighters had made the wreck afraid of shadows. He thought about Dr. Yuna, whose message had finally made the wreck understand what they were facing. He thought about every ordinary human who'd stood up when standing up meant death. "Aye, Lord," Hansu said finally. "You saw our words as weakness. You heard our sayings and thought they were primitive poetry. Empty sounds from a young species that did not understand the universe." He took a step forward. "You were wrong. Our words are not weakness. They are the record of our strength. Every saying you mocked was paid for in blood. Every lesson you dismissed was learned through suffering. Our ancestors did not create these words because they were dreamers. They created them because they were survivors." He paused and looked around the assembly hall. "You asked how we resisted you. The answer is simple. We have been resisting since the first day of our existence. We have faced ice ages that nearly ended our species. We have faced plagues that killed half our population. We have faced wars where brothers killed brothers and cities burned to ash. We have faced our own cruelty, our own darkness, our own worst nature." His voice grew stronger. "And every time we survived. Every time we got back up. Every time we found a way to continue. This is not because we are strong. It is because we refuse to be weak. This is not because we cannot be broken. It is because we always rebuild." Lord Morik listened without moving. "You asked why humans are feared," Hansu continued. "It is not our ships. We both know your technology is still more advanced than ours. It is not our weapons. Your guns are bigger than our guns. It is not our numbers. There are far more of you than there are of us." He met Morik's gaze through the hologram. "We are feared because we would rather die standing than live kneeling. We are feared because surrender is not in our nature. We are feared because when you push us, we push back harder. When you hurt us, we hurt you worse. When you try to break us, we become stronger." He spread his hands. "This is the truth your empire learned too late. This is what you should have understood when I stood in this hall 6 months ago and warned you. We did not want war. We still do not want war. But if war comes to us, we will fight until the last human draws their last breath. And even then, our children will remember. They will carry our words. They will continue the fight." Admiral Hansu lowered his hands and spoke his final words. "That, High Lord, is why humans are feared. Not because of what we have, but because of what we are. And that is something no empire can conquer." The hall remained silent for a long moment. Then High Lord Morik slowly lowered his head. It was not a bow, but it was close. It was an acknowledgement. "I understand," Morik said quietly. "I understand now." The peace negotiations took 3 more days. In the end, the Vrek agreed to return all human colonies. They agreed to pay for the damage they had caused. They agreed to a treaty that recognized humanity as an equal power in the galaxy. But more importantly, they added a new entry to their military records. It became required reading for every Vrek soldier, every commander, every leader. The entry said, "Never underestimate the humans. They are small, short-lived, and fragile. But they possess something we do not understand. Something that makes them rise when they should fall. Something that makes them fight when they should surrender. Something that makes them dangerous beyond measure. If you must face humans in battle, Be prepared to pay a price greater than you can imagine. And if you have a choice, do not face them at all. On Earth, the heroes of the war were honored. Captain Tae Woo received the highest medal humanity could give. Lieutenant Su Jin was promoted and given command of her own ship. Sergeant Daeho returned to his family and wrote a book about his experiences. Dr. Yuna began a new project, translating human history for other species so they might understand what the wreck had learned too late. But the most important change happened far from Earth. On worlds where humans had never walked, on these worlds, where other species lived under the rule of cruel empires, something new was spreading. It moved in whispers, in secret messages, in words passed from parent to child. Human sayings. Those who stand together cannot be broken, they whispered. Fall 7 times. Stand up 8, they told each other. The mountain does not bow to the wind, they remembered. Species that had given up hope began to hope again. Species that had accepted slavery began to dream of freedom. Species that had believed resistance was impossible began to think that maybe, just maybe, they could fight back too. Because if humanity could do it small, young, fragile humanity, then perhaps anyone could. Years later, a historian from a distant species wrote about this time. He called it the human moment, the time when one young civilization changed everything. The humans did not conquer the galaxy, he wrote. They did not seek to rule others. They simply showed the galaxy that even the mightiest empire could be resisted. They showed that courage matters more than numbers. They showed that spirit matters more than technology. They showed that words, simple, ancient, human words, could carry the weight of entire civilizations. He ended his book with a quote from Admiral Hansu, given during an interview many years after the war. People ask me what I am most proud of, Hansu had said. They expect me to talk about battles won or enemies defeated. But that is not what I am proud of. I am proud that we stayed true to what we are. We did not become monsters to fight monsters. We did not lose our humanity to save our lives. We fought with courage, with honor, with everything our ancestors taught us. And in the end, we proved that the words they gave us were not just poetry. He had smiled then. An old man with gray hair and tired eyes who had seen too much. They were prophecy. And so the story of humanity spread across the stars. A story of a young species that refused to bow. A story of simple words that carried the weight of survival. A story of ordinary people who did extraordinary things. The galaxy had learned why humans were feared. But more importantly, they had learned why humans were loved. Because in the darkness of space, where empires rose and fell like waves, humanity had shown that even the smallest light could push back the shadows. Even the weakest voice could speak truth. Even the youngest species could stand tall. And that was something the galaxy would never forget.